Ladies and gentlemen, folks, it's Devon Townsend. How you been doing? It has been years since I've kind of been online. I don't even know how to start this. I don't even know where to begin. I guess about 2 years ago, while I was in the midst of recording light work, Twitter was changing, and I just felt like so much of what we were asked to do is just create stupid content. And so I just didn't want to do any of it. Plus, I just went through a few things that required a lot of emotional resilience. And so I decided to come off. And now I realize that I want to share what I'm doing with folks again. I'm a little nervous, I think. I think I get asked to make content all the time, and it's often just feels so stupid. And then there's all the things that you're supposed to ask people to do, like to subscribe and all that stuff. And it just seems really stupid. But the thing that I realized that I missed was a big part of my process to create music involves sort of talking about it to people who participate in it. And I think another thing that brought me off of being on social media over the past couple of years is, frankly, there's a lot of people in my professional world that think that I speak too much when I go online. I talk about the projects that I do, or I would show rough artwork or things like this, and they're saying, well, we're trying to release these things and we're trying to make some sort of momentum, but you doing that kind of compromises that process. So I stopped doing it. But I realized that in writing right now, without that, I just think it sucks. And it's not because what I do I think is of such importance that everybody needs to know it. It's always been the case where I have such limited peripheral vision when it comes to what I'm doing, that being able to sort of tell people what I'm working on really helps. So this is update number 1. I'm going to tell you what I've been doing, tell you what I'm working on, tell you what to expect. And my hope is that I can maintain these updates once a week, once every 2 weeks. If I have something to say. You may have noticed I've got a podcast back up and running, and I'm just trying to figure out how to use these stupid cameras. But I'm getting there. I just figured out autofocus today, so now I might be in focus. And I had to learn. I didn't know what ISO was. I didn't know what aperture was. But now I kind of know, so that the quality of these posts should conceivably get better. I just had another idea. Let me write this down. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you what I'm working on. And I'm going to update you. Not because I'm trying to engage. Well, maybe there's a part of that. I miss the audience, for sure. I miss being able to engage with people. I don't miss some of the toxicity that came with Twitter. So I think it changed, right? Now it's X or something. I couldn't be fucked with that. Couldn't be bothered with that, I mean. So I think that I'll make the platforms that I communicate with people at this point, YouTube and Instagram. This is separate than the podcast. The podcast, Devon Townsend Podcast, is now morphed into something that I'm using as a way to describe what is going on within the act of creating. But this, whatever this is going to be called, update for the time being. It's like, this is what I'm working on. This is where my mind's at with that. And then I can sort of get a gauge as to where that's at. So this is different than the podcast, if that makes any sense. I doubt it does. It does. Kind of does. I need a name for this. That'll lead me to the first thing. So I got a list, right? The first thing I'd like to talk about is, over the past 2 years, I built a studio, but I also have been trying to figure out ways to do live improvise and stream things online without it being this huge rigmarole, because I like to play for people, but the past few streams that I did were just such a huge ordeal that doing something like that consistently just becomes really problematic. So what I've been doing, first off, is I have built a spaceship. It's not done yet. I'm about 3 weeks away from it being done. And we named it, well, my buddy Matt actually helped. He came up with the name. Spaceship's going to be called the Ruby Quaker. What is that? It's a cool name for spaceship, in my opinion. But it's also a type of moth. So the idea with this spaceship I've built is that whenever I get gear from companies, and wherever I get, because for the Moth and everything that I'm doing now, I've been designing equipment with companies, and I've been working on products that I've got ideas for that will help me facilitate that work. But everybody asks me to do ads for them, and I just feel like such a schmuck doing ads. It just seems in opposition to the nature of the work to just come out every couple of weeks and be like, I think this is great. I think this is great. Even if I do think it's great, it seems stupid to me. So what the spaceship is essentially, whenever I get a piece of gear, I can go to space and I can use it and I can improvise on a spaceship and we can fly through crazy things. And so that is, when it's done, which is in a couple of weeks, is going to be what this will morph into. These updates will be live from the Ruby Quaker. Maybe that's what it can be called. She won't be live because I'm on my own with the editing, so it'll be kind of live from space. So that's the first thing. And so what that's going to be is, I'll start each episode by doing an update like this, and then I'm going to jam. I'll just play, and that'll allow me to sort of practically show people, like, see, check it out. That's what this gear does. That's what this thing does. That's why I have it. And fortunately, the Ruby Quaker as a spaceship is sentient, so it can ask me questions about the gear. So that's one thing. Ruby Quaker, almost done. About 3 weeks. I've got a buddy who has been helping me build it, but he went in for a major surgery, so he's out of commission for the next 2 months still. So I'm working on it. I'm almost there, but it's a lot of setup. You're gonna see it. It's freaking awesome. To be 51 and to be building a spaceship is pretty much the best thing ever. So Ruby Quaker, that's what this will end up being. Updates, jamming, gear, all that. All right. Second, podcast. Devon Townsend podcast. So I did it online, and I did it on my YouTube channel, and it was great for me during the pandemic because I could talk about the records. And people say, well, why didn't you finish the records? And I kind of got bored of it. I got bored of talking about the records because all the stuff that had significant drama attached to it was in the beginning, and everything else, like, oh yeah, that Epic Cloud, we did this, and this is where we tracked the drums and whatever. And I have tried to do episodes about the records following the last one that I did, which I think was, I don't remember, Ghost maybe. But they just ended up super boring to me. Like they're just not interesting, not compelling enough for me to put out. So the Townsend podcast morphed into something that Inside Out Records supports, and that allows me to have an assistant. So to pay for an assistant, get well, buddy. And so now Devon Townsend podcast is through Inside Out, and I went through 7 iterations of pilots for that, trying to figure out something that I could do for it that I didn't hate. Because at first it's like it seemed like, again, like you're making an ad for somebody, and even if it's people I like and it's things I can get behind, and even if it's part of the deal, the process, it still just seems like, unless I can get my teeth into something that is authentic to me, I just don't want to do it, right? So after 7 pilots for Devon Townsend podcast videocast, I came across the idea of using the podcast as a way for me to describe what is going on with the creative ups and downs with the writing of the Moth and everything peripheral to the Moth, in hopes that that process being sort of honestly represented, authentically represented, will pull the veil back from some of the creative things that I go through during the process of making a record, because it's exactly the same as what everybody goes through. It's like no different. This is shit and I hate it and I can't do this and I should be a plumber. Then there's these elated, oh my God, this is the best thing ever and this is going to change the world, and all that sort of stuff is like common. So to be able to represent that through the Devon Townsend podcast became something that I could get behind. And I'm just about to record the 4th one, but I may redo the 3rd one as well, because I think it wasn't as interesting. But as I'm working through the Moth and as I'm making demos, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is on my mind right now. Like right now my thought is lyrics and theme, and how do you define that, and how do you write it, like in which way, and then how do you get behind what you're saying. And so I think I'm going to redo the 3rd one and then do that. Regardless, Devon Townsend podcast is a separate thing. And on the Instagram, you'll get links to that every time a new one comes out, of course. Okay. Next, the Moth. The Moth is a blanket statement or term for all the creative things that I'm working on right now, which includes Dream Piece, something that's like a real heavier, straight ahead, more melodic thing, tentatively calling it Power Nerd. The Moth, which started as a symphony about how humans are so connected to power and sex is the only connection to true oneness, however temporary. So society became fixated on sex as a yearning for something more. So it started as a dick symphony. And then the more I started doing it, the more I started getting people involved, and the more of the talent pool that started to become involved, and the more I started thinking about what it is that I wanted to do musically, the more that has morphed into something that's a lot more straight ahead. It's much more about a protagonist and his or her life from birth to death. And so it's much less about penises and vaginas now, as it is about the story of a life. But how the aesthetics of that play out, I don't know yet. Like, I actually don't know yet. So I've been writing all sorts of things, and as is tradition, I write, and those things articulate themselves in a certain way, and then I have another thing as a result of trying to figure out what the main thing is. And then I'll go down another rabbit hole thinking, well, maybe that's what the main thing is. And then it's not it. But then I've got this whole other avenue that I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like, I got this other thing, axolotl, I think is really interesting. But it's all shrapnel of trying to figure out where the main thing is. So Casualties of Cool seems to be part of that as well. Jay and I have been jamming again, and that seems to be part of it. So it seems like there's 4 records of some sort. But there's also all this peripheral stuff, like with Dream Piece, there's all these like things that I'm working on, like physical things that contribute to Dream Piece, and there's things that contribute to Casualties, things that contribute to the Moth, there's things that contribute to orchestral performances and the live band and the more traditional stuff that I do. But I'm spending the next year and a half just writing and recording. So that's what's going on a musical level. Which brings me to one of the aspects of that, which I'm going to utilize the YouTube channel this week to introduce. So I put out Dream Piece maybe about 2-3 months ago, and basically it's ambient records that I record. I do that every day, and I have 4 more in the works. Well, 3, I guess. I've got Harmonic Dharma, Distant Symphonies, and something about a living room. And those projects are essentially made for people who are dealing with trauma. So if you have trauma, Dream Piece is meant to help you at night or to help you calm down. That's what its intent is. And I made a YouTube channel for Dream Piece. But I don't think as many people have seen it as I think maybe should. Not that it's essential listening to most of the audience, and perhaps the people who need to hear it or want to hear it have already heard it, I don't know. But I think from here on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release not only on the Dream Piece channel, but also on the Devon Townsend YouTube channel. So this week, I'm going to release 1 a day, just with a link to the Dream Piece as well, just so it's in both places. And so if you haven't heard it, it's floaty ambient music, but its intent is for people with trauma, right? So if you are really dealing with something and stimulus is too much, it's all too much. The idea is that Dream Piece, you put it on and it's calming because it doesn't demand anything from you. I think I figured out aperture. Is that what it does? So that's in pitch or in focus because it's on autofocus. And then okay, that's cool. All right. So starting tomorrow, I guess, if this is Monday, if this comes out on Monday, October 23rd, then I guess Tuesday I'll just put it, and they're the same ones that you've already heard, if you've already heard them. I'll start with Sky Gods and Pond Skimmer, and I'll put them up just so they're in both places. So that's what's going on with Dream Piece, and I've got 3 or 4 more Dream Piece albums in the works, but they tend to come in fits and starts. So although I write it every day, finalizing it takes a certain frame of mind that I'm not often in right now because everything's so busy, right? But there's 4 more in the works. Okay, following that, I'm going to release the film for the puzzle on this YouTube, on Devon Townsend YouTube channel, because the puzzle, as much as it was a contentious release for me, where a lot of people didn't like it and a lot of people didn't hear it and a lot of people were like, it's just noise, it was an incredibly important record for me because of the breakthroughs that came in the process of writing it. It was an entirely new way of thinking. And although admittedly the puzzle is, this creepy, dark, dirty, like schizophrenic sounding record, that's where I was during the pandemic. So that I have no apologies for what it is. But the reason why it's important to me is because the process of making that, it was like opened up a whole bunch of new doors for me. Because I think the thing that people didn't realize about the puzzle when they listened to it, they're like, oh, it's just, you just got tape delays and distortion and it's all this random thing. But the reason why it was so important to me is every sound on the puzzle I labored over, every reverb, every transition, everything. So the puzzle is 100% intentional. And the way that I did that was a way that I think can yield a ton of really cool orchestral avenues if I focus on it in a way that isn't chaos, in a way that isn't just abstract, creepy weirdness. So I'm going to re-release the puzzle. We've still got maybe a couple of hundred of the box sets left. And I had heard from people that we should slash the prices on those and just get rid of it. And I'm like, no, it's too important to me. That box set was the coolest thing I ever made. So I'm going to put the movie out on YouTube, maybe in 2 weeks. And also, we'll see if anybody wants any of those box sets. Not that it matters, but there's still some available. And I got a buddy, Conrad, who made videos for Bend It Like Bender and Coast and a bunch of things. And he's done a bunch of videos for the puzzle. It's all his idea, and it's pretty far out there, but it's pretty cool. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going to put puzzle film as well as more stuff about puzzle, just to kind of, not that I'm trying to convince people to like it, because it's not a likable project in a lot of ways, but because it was so important to me in terms of how it was made and how that is also a part of, not sonically, but technically, how I've been pursuing certain aspects of my writing. I just want to reintroduce it once more. And then I won't talk about it anymore. So that's that. Ruby Quaker, puzzle, dream piece, Moth, Power Nerd, Casualties, podcast. Okay. Twitch. So I was doing Twitch streams, and I was able to interact with people, and I actually really enjoyed that. I had to build everything so that I could focus again, and I'm almost done. I got 3 more weeks to do the Spaceship, and then after that, I hope that we can do that again, because I think that's a good way for me to bounce things off of people as well. And other than that, that's this week's update. I've got I think that once a month, the Devon Townsend podcast is going to come out. Once a week, it's going to be this. Hopefully, if I'm able to eke the time out, which I think is just a choice rather than circumstance. So, okay, I'll do it. But I really want to do it too, so there's that. So until next time, that's where I'm at. Sorry I haven't been around for the past couple of years, but things have been fucked. As they have for many of us, but yeah, things have been fucked. And I needed to straighten everything out. And things continue to be fucked in a lot of ways. I'm still waiting for a call this morning about something that happened last night that was awful. So, but it's all of us, right? Like, I'm certainly not unique or special in that regard. So for all of you who are dealing with things as well, you have my heart, and maybe if you haven't heard the Dream Piece stuff, I'll start posting it tomorrow, and maybe that'll help. I listen to the Dream Piece stuff all the time. I listen to it every day. Not only do I write it every day, not only am I a client, but not only do I write it every day, but I actually listen to it all the time. I listen to it at night. I listen to it when I'm mowing the lawn. I listen to it a lot. And it actually, from what I've heard and my own experience, if you're dealing with trauma, it actually helps because it doesn't demand anything from you. Moth is going to demand a lot from me and from the listeners, so I'm going to shut up now. Thanks for the support. I'm going to figure out more about these cameras and then take it easy. See you next week.